Before we dive into this chilling tale, make sure to hit like and subscribe for more spine-tingling stories. You won't want to miss the true, dark accounts I'm about to share. So sit tight and let's begin. It was the 12th of October, 2024. The city was Las Vegas, a place known for its lights, entertainment, and of course, its secrets. My name? Well, let's just say I'm a survivor now, and every time I think about that trip, I can't help but shiver. A honeymoon. Something that's supposed to be a dream, right? Well, for me and Sarah, that dream quickly turned into a nightmare. That it was my first time in Vegas, and everything about the city felt like it was trying to swallow me whole. The lights were too bright, the sounds too loud, the people too strange. Sarah, my new wife, was so excited. She had planned everything. It was supposed to be our perfect escape, away from all the stress of the wedding and everything that followed. But from the moment we arrived at that hotel, something just didn't sit right with me. We checked into the Vanderbilt Hotel, one of those fancy places where everything feels overly polished, like they're trying to hide something. The receptionist, an older woman with unnervingly wide eyes, welcomed us with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Your suite is ready," she said. Her voice was soft, but there was an undertone to it, something that made the hairs on my neck stand up. I could tell Sarah didn't notice. She was too busy taking in the grand chandelier hanging in the lobby. Or maybe it was the extravagant marble floors. We got the key and made our way up to the suite. It was beautiful, no doubt, but there was something old-fashioned about it. Everything was luxurious but off. The wallpaper had this faded floral pattern, and the furniture looked like it hadn't been touched in years. A strange feeling crept up on me, like this room had been waiting for us for a long time, like it had seen couples just like us before. As we unpacked, Sarah got excited about the view of the city from the balcony. But I couldn't shake that feeling, like I was being watched. I brushed it off as nerves after all. This was supposed to be our honeymoon, right? But then I saw it. There, hanging on the wall, was a painting. A landscape. A simple scene, or so I thought. As I stared at it, my stomach twisted. The trees, the mountains, the river, they felt so familiar, but not in a comforting way. There was something wrong about it. I stepped closer, my eyes tracing every inch of the artwork, and that's when I noticed the figures. Two people standing by the water's edge, their faces hidden, but their postures were too familiar. They looked like us. I blinked, shook my head, and told myself it was nothing. But the nagging feeling didn't leave. "David, come here. Look at this." Sarah called from the balcony. I tried to shake off the strange feeling and walked over to her. But as I did, I heard it. A whisper. Soft, like the breeze, but unmistakable. My name, David. I froze. My heart skipped. I turned around, but there was no one there. I scanned the room quickly. Nothing. "Did you hear that?" I asked Sarah, trying to sound casual. She looked at me, confused. "Hear what?" "You're imagining things." "Maybe," I muttered. But it didn't feel like nothing. The air in the room felt heavier, like something was pressing down on me. I tried to ignore it. After all, I had no reason to believe in ghosts or curses. But then, Sarah went to take a shower, and I had the room to myself. That's when it happened. I saw her again. The woman from the painting. She wasn't in the painting, but in the mirror now. Just a fleeting image, but enough to send a cold wave through me. She was standing by the river, her figure blurry, as if she wasn't really there at all. "Sarah?" I called out, but my voice was too quiet. My heart was pounding in my chest. I took a step forward. The woman disappeared. Just like that. Vanished. I didn't know what to think. Was it a trick of the light? Maybe it was. I'd heard stories about Las Vegas being filled with illusions, but this felt different. More real. I walked out onto the balcony to get some fresh air, trying to shake the feeling of unease. But as I looked out at the city, I saw a figure, standing across the street. Just standing there still, like they were waiting for something. It was a man, dressed in black, his face hidden by a wide-brimmed hat dot, and then, without warning, he turned and walked into the shadows, disappearing. Into the night. I didn't tell Sarah. She wouldn't have believed me. She was too busy enjoying the luxury of the suite, too immersed in the beauty of Las Vegas. But I couldn't ignore what I had seen. Later that night, when we went to sleep, I kept the light on. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was going to happen, something bad. Sarah was asleep next to me, oblivious to the dread building up inside me. And then, at 3 a.m., the whispers returned. Only this time, they weren't soft. They were loud, clear, and coming from the hallway. David... Sarah. I shot up in bed, my heart racing. Sarah, I whispered urgently, shaking her awake. But before she could even respond, the door to our suite creaked open. I didn't know what to do. Who could be at the door at this hour? But when I peeked out from behind the door, no one was there. Nothing but the silence of the hotel. The whispers had stopped too. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I spent the rest of the hours staring at the ceiling, praying I was just imagining things. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Something was watching us. And it wasn't over. It was just beginning. The morning came too soon. I didn't feel rested. In fact, I felt more tired than when I went to bed. Sarah, on the other hand, was glowing. She had no idea about the nightmare I'd just gone through. She looked at me, smiling as she sipped her coffee, ready for a day out on the strip. I forced a smile back at her, not wanting to ruin her excitement. But something inside me told me that I needed to leave the hotel. I didn't trust it anymore. There was a heaviness in the air that felt suffocating. We left the room to head out for the day. And as soon as we stepped into the hallway, I felt it again, the chilling sensation of being watched. The hallways of the Vanderbilt were eerily quiet. It was as if the entire hotel was asleep, despite the bright daylight shining outside. The lights flickered above us as we walked, casting long twisted shadows across the walls. I glanced back once, but there was no one behind us. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was following us. David, are you okay? Sarah asked, noticing my tense expression. You look like you've seen a ghost. I managed a weak smile. I'm fine. Just a little tired. We got into the elevator, and as the doors closed, I felt a sudden drop in temperature. The air turned icy, and the elevator lights flickered. Sarah shivered beside me, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I kept my eyes locked on the numbers above the door, watching them change slowly as we descended. The elevator seemed to move too slowly, dragging out every second. Every heartbeat out when the doors finally opened. We stepped out into the lobby, and my eyes scanned the room. It was crowded, full of tourists, but I couldn't shake the feeling of dread in my chest. I wanted to tell Sarah to leave the hotel, but I couldn't. Something deep inside me told me I had to stay, to confront whatever it was that was haunting us. But I had no idea what I was dealing with yet. Let's go explore the city, Sarah said, grabbing my arm with excitement. She was oblivious to the unease I felt, and for a moment, I envied her. We walked out into the hot Vegas sun, but even the bright sunlight didn't warm the chill in my bones. As we passed the famous casinos, the flashing lights, the crowd of people, I couldn't help but feel like something was lurking just beneath the surface. But every time I looked over at Sarah, I forced myself to push those thoughts aside. She was enjoying herself, and I didn't want to ruin it for her. Not yet. We passed through the streets, and that's when I saw him again. The man in black, he was standing across the street, watching us. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. The man's face was hidden, but I knew it was him. The same wide-brimmed hat, the same dark figure. He wasn't moving, just standing there, still. As a statue, David. Sarah's voice cut through the haze of panic in my mind. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," I said, forcing myself to look away from the figure. "Let's keep walking." We continued down the street, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was following us. No matter how far we went, no matter how many turns we made, I could feel his presence. It was like he was always just behind us, watching, waiting. We stopped at a nearby cafe for a break, but as soon as we sat down, I saw him again across the street, standing in the shadows. My heart was racing now. He was getting closer. It was too much to ignore. "David?" Sarah asked, her voice full of concern. "What's going on?" Before I could answer, the waiter came over, handing us our drinks with a forced smile. But when he looked at me, his eyes were wide with fear, like he had seen a ghost. He quickly turned away, avoiding eye contact. "Are you okay?" I asked. Him, my voice trembling. The waiter hesitated, his gaze flickering toward the back of the cafe, then back to me. He leaned in close, lowering his voice. "You should leave this place. It's not safe here. The hotel, the city, it's cursed." I froze. "What do you mean?" I whispered, but the waiter just backed away, shaking his head. "You won't believe me until it's too late." Before I could ask him anything else, he disappeared into the kitchen. My mind was spinning, and a sick feeling rose in my stomach. What was going on? Was the hotel cursed? Or was it just my imagination running wild? But then Sarah smiled at me, oblivious to the chaos in my mind, and everything inside me told me to protect her, to get her out of this nightmare before it was too late. As we left the cafe, I saw the man one last time. He was standing in front of the hotel now, staring at me. No, not just staring, smiling. That's when I realized the nightmare wasn't just about me. It was about Sarah too. And I was going to have to do whatever it took to get us both out of this dot. By the time we made it back to the hotel, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the streets. Las Vegas, with all its glitz and glam, felt far less magical now. Every street corner, every flickering light, seemed to hold something sinister. Sarah was excited to get ready for dinner, but I couldn't bring myself to join her. I needed to think, to figure out what was really going on here. I told her I was going to rest for a while, but in truth, I was waiting for something. I couldn't explain it, but I had a feeling that whatever was going to happen next, it would be tonight. Lay on the bed, my thoughts racing. The whispers from the night before, the strange painting in the suite, the waiter's warning, it all felt too connected, like a puzzle I couldn't solve. My eyes kept drifting to the corner of the room where that eerie painting hung. It felt like it was calling me, pulling me in. Something about it was drawing me closer, like I was meant to figure it out. I sat up and walked over to it, my heart pounding in my chest. I reached out, my fingers grazing the frame. The room seemed to grow colder, the air heavier. I stared at the figures in the painting again. The two people standing by the water, their faces still hidden. But this time, something was different. The image wasn't static anymore. It was moving. I blinked, unsure of what I was seeing. The two figures shifted, subtly at first. I could see their movements now. They were walking toward the water, but they weren't alone. In the background, there was a third figure, standing just outside the frame, watching them. I froze, my blood running cold. It was the man in black. I pulled my hand back from the painting as if it had burned me. The room seemed to close in on me, the walls pressing together, the air suffocating. I ran to the window and threw it open, desperate for fresh air. But when I looked outside, I saw nothing but the city lights, flashing and vibrant, as though nothing had changed. I turned around, trying to shake off the feeling of unease. But then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement, just a flicker, like a shadow passing quickly by the door. I walked toward it, my body tense, every step feeling like a trap. I reached the door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. No sign of anyone. But I felt it again, the presence. I knew someone was out there. David? Sarah's voice interrupted my thoughts. She had come back to the room, her eyes wide with concern. What's going on? You look different. I didn't answer right away. I was too shaken. The whole hotel felt like it was alive and not in a good way. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of the lights made my nerves fray even more. I don't know how to explain it, I said, my voice trembling. But something's wrong here. I don't think we should stay another night. Her eyes softened. You're just tired, David. It's Vegas. Things get a little overwhelming. We're supposed to be enjoying our honeymoon. Let's go get some dinner, okay? But I couldn't shake the fear that had taken root in my chest. I wanted to tell her everything, to show her the painting, to explain the whispers, the man in black. But I knew she wouldn't believe me, not yet. Let's go, I said, forcing a smile. But I think we need to leave after tonight. Something just doesn't feel right. We left the suite, and as soon as we stepped into the elevator again, the temperature dropped. This time, the lights didn't flicker. They went out completely. We were plunged into complete darkness. The elevator hummed softly, a sound that felt like it was coming from far, far away. My heart thudded in my chest, my breath coming in short gasps. Then I heard it, a soft scraping sound, like fingernails dragging against metal. It was coming from the far corner of the elevator. I tried to steady myself, but the sound grew louder, closer. David, what's happening? Sarah whispered, clutching my arm. Her voice trembled with fear. I don't know, I whispered back, my eyes darting around in the darkness. Just stay calm. And then, as suddenly as it started, the lights flickered back on, and the elevator door opened. We were on the ground floor, the lobby just ahead. But it wasn't the bustling, lively lobby I had seen earlier. It was eerily quiet, the air thick with tension. The receptionist, that same old woman with the wide eyes, was still behind the desk staring at us. You've come to the end of your stay, she said in a low voice, her lips curling into something that resembled a smile. I'll be seeing you soon. Her words didn't make sense, but they sent a chill down my spine. I didn't say anything. I just grabbed Sarah's hand and led her out of the hotel. We were outside now, on the Vegas Strip, but it felt like we had entered a different world. The lights were too bright, the sounds too distorted. Everything was wrong. I could feel the weight of the hotel pressing down on us like it was watching us, waiting for us to come back. And then, across the street, I saw him again, the man in black. He was standing in front of the hotel, watching us, smiling. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed Sarah's hand and ran. We ran down the street, past the flashing lights and the busy crowd, not looking back. But the feeling of being followed didn't go away. It only grew stronger. We ran for what felt like an eternity, but no matter how far we went, it seemed like we couldn't escape. The city felt suffocating, like it was closing in on us. I glanced over my shoulder every few seconds, certain that I would see the man in black behind us, but each time I saw nothing. Only the blurry shapes of strangers, moving through the chaos of the strip. Sarah was breathing heavily beside me, her grip on my hand tightening with every step. David, what's going on? What's happening? Why are we running? I don't know, I gasped, my lungs burning. I just feel like we're being hunted. Her eyes widened. Hunted? I didn't want to scare her, but I couldn't hold it in anymore. There's something wrong with that hotel. The painting. The waiter, they warned us. And the man in black. He's not just some random guy. He's part of this. I swear it. We ducked into a nearby alley to catch our breath, our backs pressed against the cold brick wall. I could still hear the sounds of the city, but everything felt distant now, like we were in a world of our own. The buzz of neon lights, the distant laughter of tourists, none of it felt real anymore. "David, you're scaring me," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "Maybe you're just exhausted. Maybe you need to sleep and everything will feel better." I shook my head. "No, I don't think so. Something is wrong, Sarah. I can feel it in my bones." I looked around, trying to steady myself. The alley was dark and empty, but even then, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. My heart raced as I scanned the shadows. I knew something was out there, waiting. Suddenly, I heard the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from the mouth of the alley. My pulse shot up. The man in black was here. I grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her deeper into the shadows, but it was too late. There he was, standing at the entrance of the alley, his wide-brimmed hat casting a dark shadow over his face. The same figure I had seen in the hotel. The same smile, the same chilling presence. "You can't run forever," the man said, his voice low and smooth, like honey dripping from his lips. "You've already crossed the line." I wanted to run. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't move. It was like my body had frozen, paralyzed by the weight of his words. "Who are you?" I forced myself to ask, though my voice trembled. The man tilted his head, as if amused by my question. "You don't need to know. You just need to understand that you're part of something now. You've opened the door, and there's no going back." My mind was racing. I was still trying to piece everything together. The hotel, the painting, the waiter's warning, the man in black, none of it made sense. But I knew one thing. This wasn't just a nightmare. This was real. And we were trapped. Sarah clung to my side, her eyes wide with fear. "David, we have to get out of here. Please, let's go. Please." I nodded, but as I stepped forward, trying to pull Sarah with me, the man in black stepped aside, blocking our path. "You can't escape," he said, his voice colder now. "You're already part of the game." I was done running. I had no choice but to face him, to demand answers. "What do you want from us?" The man smiled again, that same cold, knowing smile. "Nothing. I'm just the guide. The rest is up to you." Before I could react, he vanished into the shadows, leaving nothing but the lingering chill of his presence behind. I stared at the spot where he had been, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't understand what was happening, but I knew one thing. We couldn't stay here. We had to get away from this place, from the hotel, from whatever dark force was following. "Lisa, let's go," I said, my voice hoarse. "We're leaving." We didn't speak as we walked, the weight of everything pressing down on us. We made our way back toward the hotel, but I wasn't going inside. I didn't know where we were going, but I knew we couldn't stay in Las Vegas any longer. As we walked, I couldn't help but feel that we were being pulled back toward the hotel. It was like the city was conspiring against us, drawing us in like a spider's web. And then, as we approached the hotel, I saw it. The door to the Vanderbilt was wide open. It shouldn't have been. It wasn't supposed to be open. I stopped in, my tracks, my heart skipping a beat. The door was beckoning me, pulling me in. It felt like a trap, but I couldn't resist. I knew I had to go in. "David, what are you doing?" Sarah whispered, her hand gripping mine. "We can't go in there." I didn't answer. I just kept walking toward the door. The air was thick now, heavy with an invisible presence. I didn't look back. I didn't speak. I just kept moving, drawn forward by something I couldn't explain. And when we stepped inside, I knew we had made a terrible mistake. The moment we crossed the threshold of the hotel, the world around us shifted. It felt like stepping into another reality. The lobby was empty, not a single soul in sight, but the lights flickered above us in a way that made everything seem off-kilter. The once grand chandelier that had sparkled with life now appeared dim and distorted, casting shadows that didn't belong. "David, we need to leave," Sarah said, her voice low and filled with panic. Her grip on my arm tightened, but I couldn't move. I was frozen, entranced by the strange aura of the place. I turned to her, but before I could say anything, I heard it again, the soft scrape of fingernails against metal. The same sound I had heard in the elevator. It was coming from somewhere inside the hotel, echoing through the empty halls. My pulse quickened. I knew it wasn't just my imagination. The hotel was alive, and something was watching us. I stepped forward, my feet moving on their own, guided by an invisible pull. Sarah hesitated for a moment, but then she followed me, her breath shallow as she kept a close eye on me. We moved past the reception desk, where the old woman was still standing, her eyes locked onto us, her lips forming a thin, knowing smile. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, her voice carrying an unsettling weight. "It's too late now." I didn't stop. I couldn't. The man in black was here somewhere, and I had to find him. I needed answers. The hotel seemed to stretch on endlessly. The walls seemed to shift, the corridors twisting in ways they hadn't before. It was as though the building itself was alive, changing, warping around us. The deeper we went, the more disoriented I felt. The sound of our footsteps echoed through the halls, but everything else was eerily silent. The entire place felt abandoned, yet I knew we weren't alone. Then I saw it at the end of the hall. A faint light flickered through a slightly ajar door. I knew this was where I had to go. It wasn't a choice anymore. It was a compulsion. I turned the handle and pushed the door open. Inside, the room was dark except for a single lamp in the corner that cast a dim, sickly light. It illuminated a table covered in what looked like old, brittle papers. On the wall, there was another painting. This one was different, though. It wasn't a landscape like the others. It was of a figure, standing alone, looking directly at the viewer. The face was blurred, like it was being erased, but I could feel the weight of its gaze, and it made my stomach turn. "What is this?" Sarah's voice trembled behind me. "What's going on?" I didn't answer. My eyes were fixed on the figure in the painting. Something about it felt wrong, too familiar. The man in black. His presence was everywhere. I could almost hear him, his voice in my head, whispering. "You've already crossed the line," he said. "You belong to this place now." I stepped forward, my hand reaching out toward the painting. Just as my fingers brushed the frame, the temperature in the room dropped, the air growing thick and oppressive. I felt a sudden sharp pain in my chest, as if the air itself was suffocating me. Sarah gasped, her face pale with fear. "David, stop, please." But I couldn't stop. I had to know. I had to understand. The room seemed to warp around me, the walls twisting, the floor bending. Beneath my feet, the light flickered wildly, and then everything went dark. I tried to breathe, but the air felt heavy, pressing against my lungs. I opened my eyes, but I couldn't see anything. The darkness was absolute, consuming me. Then, in the pitch black, I heard the sound again, the scraping of fingernails. But this time, it wasn't distant. It was right next to me. I reached out, my hands trembling, but before I could touch anything, a cold, clammy hand grabbed my wrist. "Welcome home," the voice whispered, sending a jolt of terror down my spine. I jerked back, pulling my arm away. My heart was pounding in my chest as I scrambled to find Sarah. I couldn't see her, but I could hear her breathing, frantic, just a few feet away. "David." "I can't breathe," she gasped, her voice cracking. I reached out blindly, my hand sweeping through the darkness until I finally found her. I pulled her close, trying to keep us both calm, but the cold air was getting worse, seeping into my bones. Double quote, "Sarah, we have to get out of here," I whispered urgently. "Now." But just as I turned to leave, I heard the door behind us creak open. Something or someone was standing there. And then, just as suddenly as it had gone dark, the lights flickered back on. We were back in the lobby, standing in front of the reception desk. But the old woman was gone. The lobby was empty again, just like when we had first entered. It didn't make sense. None of it did. We need to leave. We have to get out of here, I said, my voice shaking. I didn't wait for a response. I grabbed Sarah's hand and dragged her toward the exit. But as we approached the door, it slammed shut in front of us with a deafening crash. The hotel was locking us in. I turned to face Sarah. We're not leaving, are we? Her eyes were wide with fear. We can't be trapped in here. There's no way out. I didn't have an answer for her. The walls seemed to close in on us. I looked around, desperate for an escape, but it was hopeless. We were in the grip of something dark and powerful, something that would not let us leave. The air was thick, suffocating with a sense of inevitability. Sarah's fingers tightened around mine as we stood before the door, now firmly locked. I tried the handle again, pulling and twisting, but it didn't budge. Panic was starting to creep in, but I fought it down. We couldn't afford to lose our heads. We had to find a way out, a way to survive. But the longer I stood there, the more I felt like we were sinking deeper into something we couldn't escape. "David," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "What do we do now?" I didn't have an answer. The walls around us seemed to close in, the shadows in the corners of the room growing darker, more alive. I felt them, something watching us, something waiting. I turned, scanning the room for any sign of an exit, but the lobby was eerily still, the once opulent furniture now looking worn and out of place, as if the hotel itself had aged 100 years in a single night. The air smelled stale, like it hadn't been breathed in for years. That's when I heard it again, the scrape of fingernails, but this time it was closer. Much closer. I spun around, my heart racing, but there was nothing there. Just the empty lobby, the shadows stretching unnaturally long, as though they were reaching for us. I could feel the coldness creeping up my spine, my skin prickling with the unmistakable sensation of being hunted. "David, please," Sarah said, her voice rising with panic. "What's happening? What's going on?" I turned back to her, trying to steady my breath, but the words wouldn't come. I didn't know how to explain it, didn't know how to make sense of any of it. All I knew was that whatever this place was, whatever force had its grip on us, it was going to drag us under unless we fought back. I looked around once more, trying to find something, anything that could help us. My eyes landed on the desk again. It was old and battered, but there was something on top of it, an envelope, yellowed with age. I moved toward it, my footsteps too loud in the silence. "David, wait!" Sarah called out, but I was already at the desk, picking up the envelope. The weight of it in my hands was strange, almost too heavy for its size. I carefully opened it, unfolding the brittle paper inside. The letter was written in a messy, hurried hand, the ink smudged in places, but the message was clear. "You've come too far. There is no escape. The game has begun, and there's only one way out. Find the door." I read the letter aloud, and Sarah's face paled. "Find the door? What does that mean?" Before I could respond, the door to the lobby, the one we'd tried to escape through, slammed open with a deafening crash. But it wasn't the outside world waiting for us. It was a hallway, one I hadn't seen before, stretching into darkness. The walls lined with old, cracked portraits of people whose faces were eerily blank, their eyes staring into nothing. The letter had said something about a door. This had to be it. I grabbed Sarah's hand again, and without a word, I started down the hallway. We walked quickly, but the hallway seemed to stretch longer the further we went, the darkness pressing in around us. The temperature dropped, and I could see our breath in the air. The sound of the man's voice echoed down the hall, low and mocking, like it was coming from everywhere at once. "You can't run from it. It's already inside you." I froze, my pulse quickening. The voice, it wasn't just an echo, it was real. And then, from the darkness ahead of us, I saw movement. A figure, but it was not human. It was something else, something twisted and unnatural. "David, we need to turn back," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling, but it was too late. The figure stepped closer, its body contorting unnaturally, its eyes glowing in the dark. And then it spoke. "You're mine now." The words chilled me to the bone, but I couldn't let fear stop me. I couldn't let it win. This thing, whatever it was going to take us if we didn't fight back. I reached for my pocket, my hand fumbling for the small key I'd found earlier, the one I hadn't told Sarah about. The key that had come from the same envelope. It had to fit into something. It had to open something. The figure stepped forward again, its limbs twisting unnaturally, but before it could get closer, I forced myself to move, pulling Sarah with me toward the end of the hall. We weren't going to let it take us. I reached the end of the hallway and found a door, another door, hidden behind a faded tapestry. The key fit, and the door creaked open, revealing what seemed to be an elevator. It was old, the metal rusted, the buttons worn down, but it was our only choice. I pushed Sarah inside and followed her in, pressing the button to close the doors. The figure was right behind us now, its cold breath on my neck. But just as the doors slammed shut, I heard it scream, a long, tortured sound that seemed to echo for miles. And then, just like that, we were moving. The elevator moved down slowly, its creaky mechanics grinding with every shift. The dim light inside flickered above us, casting unsettling shadows against the walls. I stood in silence, my heart still racing from the encounter, unsure of where this elevator was even taking us. The feeling of being trapped, of having no control, gnawed at my insides. I glanced at Sarah, who stood next to me, her face pale, her eyes wide with fear. She was shaking, and though she tried to hide it, I could tell she was losing her grip. The terror had sunk deep into her, just like it had in me. Double quotes, David. What do we do now? Her voice was barely a whisper, as though speaking louder would break the fragile stillness in the air. I didn't know. There was no answer I could give that would make any sense. The letter had warned us, and we had ignored it. It told us there was no escape, but now we had to keep moving forward, even though the elevator was taking us deeper into the bowels of this nightmare. The sound of the elevator's motor echoed in the silence, louder than it had been before. With each passing second, the sensation of pressure, of something pressing in on us, became unbearable. And then, without warning, the elevator jolted to a stop. I tensed, my heart pounding in my chest. The lights flickered out completely, and for a moment, we were surrounded by an impenetrable darkness. I could feel Sarah's breath, quick and shallow, next to me. Her hand gripped mine so tightly that it almost hurt. "We're not alone," she said, her voice cracking. It was a statement, not a question. I nodded, unable to speak, my throat tight with the same fear. Something was wrong. Something had shifted, and I could feel the presence in the darkness. It was as if the entire building had come alive again, closing in on us from all sides. Then, the unmistakable sound of dragging footsteps echoed from the far end of the elevator shaft, growing louder with every passing second. My heart stopped. It was the man in black. Or something worse. I turned to Sarah, trying to stay calm. "Hold on to me," I said, my voice strained. "We need to be ready." The footsteps continued, their dragging rhythm steady and slow, but there was something disturbing about them. It was as if they knew we were there, watching us, waiting for the right moment to strike. The elevator doors creaked open, and the sudden flood of light almost blinded me. It was a sickly greenish hue, casting a surreal glow across the area. I squinted, trying to make out the space. The room we were in was a stark contrast to the rest of the hotel. This place was a long, dark corridor, narrow and cold, with rusted metal walls that seemed to hum with a low, vibrating noise. There was a sense of ancient dread in the air, as if this place had been untouched for centuries, yet somehow it felt more alive than anything else we had encountered. "David, this place ... "It's wrong," Sarah whispered, almost pleading. Couldn't agree more. The floor was littered with old papers, strange markings etched into the walls, and bloodstains that hadn't been wiped away. There were no doors or windows, just endless hallways leading in different directions. The footsteps grew louder, almost deafening now. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I forced myself to stay calm, to keep thinking. If we kept moving, we might find something, a way out, a clue, anything that would help us escape this madness. And then, just as the footsteps were about to engulf us, the lights above us flickered again, this time with such force that I thought the whole building might collapse. Everything went black for a split second, and when the lights returned, we were no longer alone. At the far end of the hallway stood the figure of the man in black. His eyes glowed faintly, casting an eerie light over his face. He didn't move, just stared at us, as if daring us to make a move. His silhouette was taller than it should have been, stretching unnaturally, like it was being pulled by some unseen force. "We told you." His voice was low, like it came from a place far deeper than human speech. "You should never have come. Here, you're part of this now." A chill ran down my spine, and I knew, deep down, that this wasn't just a man. He was something older, something that had existed far longer than I could even comprehend. The building, the hotel, was its domain, its prison, and now we were trapped in it with him. "David, we have to move. We have to get away from him." Sarah screamed, tugging at my arm, but I was frozen. I couldn't take my eyes off the figure. "Run, Sarah!" I finally managed to shout. I didn't know what else to do. We had to fight to survive. This was no longer just a horror story, it was real, and the only way out was through. I grabbed her hand and pulled her down the hallway, pushing through the thick, suffocating air. Behind us, I could hear the figure's footsteps, slow and deliberate, as if he wasn't in a hurry. He knew we couldn't outrun him. I turned a corner, desperate to find something, anything that would give us a chance. The hallway stretched endlessly in front of us, but there was no sign of an exit, no sign of anything that could save us. The walls closed in as if the building itself was trying to swallow us whole. And then I saw a door far ahead. It was a plain wooden door, old and weathered, but it was the only hope we had left. I didn't hesitate. I pulled Sarah toward it, our footsteps pounding the floor as we ran. Just as we reached the door, I heard it again, the scraping, the nails dragging against metal. And then, the unmistakable voice of the man in black right behind us. "You're mine." The door opened with a heavy groan, and we stumbled through, closing it quickly behind us. The door slammed shut behind us with a deafening bang, but the sound didn't stop there. The building itself seemed to scream, a low vibrating groan that shook the walls. We stumbled forward into the room, gasping for air, and I quickly turned to lock the door. It was our only chance. The only barrier between us and whatever nightmare was chasing us. We were in another hallway, this one no less menacing than the last. The floor beneath us creaked with every step, and the walls seemed to close in around us. There were no windows, no signs of life, just a long twisting corridor that stretched into an abyss of darkness. "David, what now?" Sarah's voice trembled, barely audible above the deafening silence. Her face was streaked with sweat and fear, and I could see that the terror had begun to crack her. The same terror that had gripped me since we stepped into this hellhole. "We survive," I muttered, though the words felt empty. The truth was, I wasn't sure what survival even looked like anymore. I needed a plan, a way to outsmart whatever force was controlling this place. But my mind was racing, unable to focus. My eyes darted around, looking for an escape, anything that could help. The silence stretched on. The air felt too thick, like it was suffocating us slowly. It wasn't just the building, it was something else. The walls felt like they were breathing, pulsating, as if they were alive. A soft whisper filled the air. I couldn't make out the words, but the voice, it wasn't Sarah's, it wasn't mine. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. Then I heard it. The faintest echo of footsteps. David ... Sarah's voice broke through my thoughts, her grip on my arm tightening. We need to go. Now, I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. But we couldn't just run anymore. We needed to know what was happening. This wasn't a random series of events. It was too orchestrated, too intentional. The question remained, why us? What was the purpose of this? As we continued down the corridor, the footsteps grew louder. We were being followed again. I could feel it, the presence, the cold gaze of something just behind us, watching, waiting. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly, and then, in the distance, I saw a figure. At first, it was just a shadow, an indistinct shape moving toward us in the dark, but as it drew nearer, I recognized it. It was the man in black, but something was different this time. His features were no longer hidden in the shadows. His face was twisted, as if contorted by some dark, malicious force. His eyes, those glowing, empty eyes, seemed to burn with an otherworldly hunger. "You can't outrun it," he said, his voice low and mocking. "It's already too late." I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but my legs felt frozen, as if the very air was holding me back. But then, Sarah tugged at my arm, pulling me forward. "David, we have to keep moving." Her voice was frantic, breaking through my fear. We bolted down the corridor, faster this time, as if the very act of running would save us. The man's footsteps were right behind us, but this time, they sounded different, quicker, like he was no longer trying to catch up. He was gaining on us. We turned a corner, and then another, but the hallway seemed to repeat itself, looping back, taking us further into the building's labyrinth. Just when I thought I couldn't run anymore, I saw something ahead, a dim light, flickering weakly from under a door. It was the only light we had seen in what felt like hours. I didn't stop to think. I ran toward it, pulling Sarah with me, and we threw open the door, slamming it behind us. The room we entered was unlike any of the others. It was small, cramped, with a single light hanging from the ceiling. And there, in the center of the room, was a large mirror, cracked and dusty. At first, it seemed normal, but then I saw someone moving behind me in the reflection. I turned, but there was nothing there. My heart was pounding as I turned back to the mirror. "That's it," I said, my voice hoarse. "The door. The way out, it's in the mirror." Sarah looked at me, confused. "What do you mean?" Before I could answer, the door behind us shook, the man in black's voice now clear and menacing. "You can't escape. This place is your prison." But I wasn't going to let fear take me. I stepped forward, my reflection distorting in the cracked surface. I reached out, and as soon as my fingers brushed against the glass, the room began to tremble, the walls shaking violently. The mirror cracked further, and a gust of wind blew through the room, knocking us both off our feet. The reflection in the mirror shifted, the man in black's face appearing on the other side, grinning at us. "You can't run," he taunted. But I wasn't about to let him win in that moment. I knew what I had to do. I grabbed Sarah's hand and pulled her too. Her feet. We didn't need to fight him directly. We needed to break free. With one final push, I shattered the mirror, the shards exploding outward in a cascade of sharp glass. But as the mirror shattered, I felt the ground beneath us begin to give way. The building, the hotel, it was crumbling, breaking apart. I grabbed Sarah and pulled her with me through the falling debris. We ran, faster than we had ever run before, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a sliver of hope. We burst through another door, into the cold night air. The sky above us was clear, the stars shining bright, and the sounds of the building's collapse faded behind us. We were free. We had survived. As we stood there, breathing in the fresh air, I turned to Sarah. "We made it," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "We survived." She nodded, her eyes wide with disbelief. "But we have to tell someone. David, we have to warn them." I looked up at the darkened hotel, now just a distant silhouette in the night. "We will," I said. "But for now, we survived." And that was enough.